opened up a new form, you can go ahead and start creating your form. So for the purposes of this, I'm going to create a Google form that can be used pretty much for any subject, mostly for anecdotal notes. So if I've heard a student say something and I want to record it quickly, I can pull up my Google form and quickly fill this out to have exactly what they've said. So you want to give your form a title. So for the purposes of this, I'll just call it evaluation form. Okay, in my description, you can add a description if you'd like, but because it's just for me and I'm not actually sharing this form with anyone else, I'm just going to leave the description blank. For my first question, I always like to put the student's name. So it's really important that you always know who you're creating the comment about. So here, I would just put the student. Then over here, you have a lot of options as to what type of question you would like to ask. So for example, you can have short answer, paragraph, multiple choice where you can only select one option, check boxes if you're looking to select multiple options, a drop down, you can upload things, create a scale, for example on a scale of 1 to 5, a multiple choice grid, checkbox grid, date, time. So you have tons of options as to what you can do. I personally like the drop down option. But if you tend to work in groups a lot in your classroom and you'd be making assessments or comments about multiple students at a time, the checkbox option might be better for you. But for me, I'm going to choose the drop down. And what you would go ahead and do is just start typing in the students in your class. So I won't go through and add all the students, but there's a couple just to give you an example. And down at the bottom here, I'm actually going to slide this over to make this a required question so that automatically my form won't let me submit unless I've chosen a student. So that just is a fail-safe to make sure I actually choose a student before moving on. To add a question, you can just come up here, look at this bar here, and add a question. My second question is going to be for the subject area. Because I've made this form as just kind of a general anecdotal form, I might want to know what subject I'm talking about. For this, I'm actually going to choose the checkbox option because I often do a lot of cross-curricular tasks, and sometimes it's nice to be able to select more than one option. So here you would go ahead and just type in your subject areas. I won't type them all in, but here's to give you a bit of an idea, and I'm also going to make that a required question to make sure I don't move on without checking one of those. My third and final question for this very simple evaluation form is just going to be my comments. So I really love to make anecdotal notes, record exactly what students say. So here would be my space to do that. If you really are only looking for a short answer, you can put short answer, but paragraph is better. It just gives you a little bit more options. And I'm also going to make this a required question so that I don't forget to answer and put a comment in. So there is pretty much the simplest form of an evaluation form that you can make for your class. You can add in other areas if you'd like, other questions, but for the purposes of this, I'm just going to keep it really simple. When you think you're happy with your form, you can go up the top here and you'll see the preview option, which is this little eye. If you just click on that, it'll open a new page with your form open, so you can actually go through and test out your form. So I have my student, so it's a drop down, so I can drop down and select what student I would like to talk about. I can select one subject or two subjects, and I can make a comment about what they said, what they did, really anything you want here. So if I were just to make a comment, test 1, 2, 3, and then I go ahead and I can submit that. So immediately it tells you that your answers have been recorded, and if you want to submit another response. So this is great if you're really trying to get a couple of responses in for different students. You can just go right into submitting another response. If you don't want to submit another response, that's not a big deal. I actually just clicked at the top right corner. There was a little button there that took me back to my original page. So here I can go through and actually edit my questions if I'd like. But what I really want to show you is this response tab up here. So right beside the questions, you can go to your responses. So it'll actually break down, it'll give you a summary of everything you've ever put into this form. So I only have one option right now, and I put in a comment for Sarah, for math and history, and my comment was test 1, 2, 3. Okay, but you can organize that differently, so you can look at each individual form, but what I like best about the forms option is that if you go over here, you can actually create a spreadsheet right from the form. So using the information that you've inputted into the form, either today or for the past 3 months, you just click this little green button. You'll create a new spreadsheet. You can give this a title, for example, evaluation. And you're going to hit create. It's going to open a new tab, and it's going to open a Google Sheets for you. In the Sheets, it's automatically going to put in the date and time you made a comment or you filled out the form. It's going to put in what student you made, and hopefully you'll have a few more options than I do here, the subject and the comment. What's really nice about this when you go back to write reports or anything like that is you can actually organize this. If you sort A to Z, you can organize this by student. So if I were to organize this by student, then all of my comments about Sarah would be all in one place. I would have the dates of them all, the subjects, and the comments all together. So it's really helpful for that. If I'm looking specifically for math comments and I need to figure out who I need math comments for, I can sort by subject and look through the math comments. So it's really helpful in that sense, getting an idea of what you need, what you already have, putting it all together. And you can also, when in doubt, control find or command find if you're on a Mac, and search a specific comment or a specific student or a specific subject. So it's really great that way, and I love that you can export into an Excel document. Now I'll show you how to create a more specific form. So less a general anecdotal form for any subject area and just comments. And this is more for if you have a specific task or presentation that you're looking to evaluate. So I'm just going to go ahead and title this the title of my task, which might be a language presentation. And you can add a bit more of a description if you have a specific task in mind, but for the purposes of this, I'll just call it that. So again, my first question, I'm always going to start with my student who's doing the presentation. If it's a group presentation, you're definitely going to want to go with the checkbox option, but if it's just a single student, you can just do the drop-down option like we did with the last one. So I've got my students in there. It's going to be a required question, and I'm going to add a question. This time I'm going to make use of the linear scale option that they have here, which is really great. So you can ask a question and it'll give you on a scale of 1 to 5. You can also change that to be a bigger scale, 1 to 10, whatever you'd like. I'm going to keep it at 1 to 5 because that goes really well with our levels. Levels 1 to 4 usually, but if you count 0, maybe we can add 0 and do this to 4. Okay, so if I wanted to add a question or a subject in, for example, maybe I'm grading the clarity, how well they speak. So not clear at all, very clear all the time. So this is where you add what your variables are basically. And I really like to make my questions required because I often go quickly through forms and forget to fill out a question here or there, and anything I really want filled out I'm going to put down as required to make sure I don't miss it. So you can see even when I went to add the next question that this is already here. So clarity, and you can rate it on a scale of 0 to 4. Then you can add other questions. For example, maybe I'm going to add a question with checkboxes. That's, did they have all the components of their presentation? So did they have an introduction? Did they have an argument? Did they have supporting information? And did they have a concluding sentence? So I'm going to be keeping track. Did they have all of this? And I'm going to make that a required as well. So when I'm going through listening to their presentation, I'll have this form open. I'll be filling out the clarity, maybe voice, whatever you're looking to evaluate basically. And I'll also be checking off the components. So as they go through, I'll say, yes, they had an introduction. Yes, they had an argument. I didn't hear any supporting information, so I'm not going to check that, but I am going to check a concluding sentence. Okay, and if you wanted to, you could add other, and that gives people the option, if there's something else you wanted to add, maybe they added something in that was really great, but it's not part of the requirement. You can type in other, and then at the end, maybe you can just put in a comment section, and that's where you would comment on what the other thing was. So here, I would just put a short answer or a paragraph, doesn't really matter which one. Okay, and now you're ready to preview, and you can add as many things as you're evaluating. So here's my presentation, or my form, sorry, looking at my language presentation. So when they get up there to do it, say James is presenting right now. His clarity, you know what, he's pretty clear, and ahead of time you would go over this with the students. What does very clear mean? What does not clear mean? That kind of stuff. And then your components. Yep, he had an introduction, he had an argument, oh, missing the supporting information, but there's his concluding sentence. He also had really great enthusiasm, maybe, or he added in an extra part about a personal story. Here in the comments, you might say he trailed off a bit in the middle, but overall, really well done. Okay, and then you go ahead and you can submit that and look at the responses later on. So now you're ready for the next student who's ready to present.